There was no denying it. Today was the very last day of summer. Tomorrow you were heading to class. You were excited to go back. Though summer had been fun, you had taken your full fill, and now you were longing for fresh excitement. A new school year was full of potential. You got dressed, not envisaging the day before you, but contemplating what lay ahead of you tomorrow. Life was sure going to be different. You had come to think of the summer vacation as the norm, but school stretched out for the majority of the year, whereas the summer vacation was just a break in the middle. So rather than it being different, it was kind of a return to the normal. What did your normal life really mean? You considered how fondly your moms talked about their summer vacations as kids. You dimly recognized that one year the pattern of school and summer itself would be over for good. It was hard to imagine. You'd gotten distracted. One arm still out of a sleeve, you pulled it through and put your mind back to the present. The season had brought about plenty of changes of its own, like Kira's visit, though that too was coming to an end today. You were happy you'd finally gotten the chance to know her. She was interesting to be around. You liked how easy it was to talk to her. You finished dressing and went downstairs, ready to find out what the today held for you. Laying on your belly, you were lounging on the couch in your living room. You gave your legs one last good stretch when your moms came over, looking amused. Any chance you could make some room for us? They sat down on either side of you after you rearranged yourself, and in doing so, you noticed that Elizabeth was fuming from one of the seats at the dinner table. You weren't the only one that caught that. It shouldn't be much longer, Elizabeth. We just wanted to make sure that we were all here to say goodbye before Kira leaves. Jeez.
Please?
Faye, could you pop on over there to check how it's going, please? With a plain nod, you left the house and made it across the street. Immediately, you noticed the front door to the Holden house was open, and you approached curiously, peeking inside. Cove noticed you right away and greeted you with a wave. You stepped fully in the doorway. Hi. What's up? My mom's wanted everyone to say bye before your mom leaves. Cove smiled lightly at that and nodded. Mom already called a taxi. We're taking our bags out. Cove, who are you talking to? And just then, Mr. Holden came by to see the visitor. His expression brightened when Cove took a step to the side so that he could see you there. Always good to see you, Faye. But why are you standing out there? Come on in. He gestured for you to come inside, and you did so. Sliding in past Cove, Kira popped out from another room after hearing the noise, and a big smile grew on her face. Hi, Faye. So glad I get to see you today. Hello? Nodding, Kira turned her attention back to her voice. She patted Cliff on the arm with a warm smile, and then she enveloped Cove in a crushing hug. Initially, Cove squirmed to break free from her grip, but his mom was unfazed and kept him locked in place. Heartbeats later, he gave in and hugged her back tightly.
I'm so glad.
And I'm so glad, happy this trip was a success. Cliff looked like he was bursting with pride. And then Cove stiffened. Kira loosened her hold on him enough to study his face. Concerned, she spoke her next words in a whisper that had been meant just for her son.
What do you think?
Do you want to unshelve it? Raising an eyebrow, Cliff watched them carefully. His smile began to falter.
What's wrong?
What's wrong? Cove sighed, and his gaze flickered over to you for a moment, and then just as quick, it was back on his parents.
It's okay.
It's alright.
Really?
Are you sure? I don't want to do it now. I can tell that later. Nervously, you watched the exchange with a growing suspicion that Cove didn't want to have that conversation while you were there. You wondered if you should offer to leave when Kira gave Cove a pat on the head.
All right.
You can always call me if you want me to be part of the conversation, okay? I'll call. Thanks, Mom. Cliff still looked baffled after what Kira and Cove were referring to, but you watched as his shoulders slowly relaxed. You figured that he decided to wait for Cove to be ready to talk to him. And with Cliff's silence, things seemed to be settled down for now. After that, it wasn't long before the taxi arrived, rolling up in front of the house, and in clear view of the open door, Kira stood up, smiling sadly. Well, that's my ride. Yeah. The matching reply got a chuckle out of Kira as you all filed out of the room. Father and son went with Kira's bags in hand. Once outside, you spotted your family waiting by the street, and to your surprise, Derek was also with them. He stood uncomfortably, and he waved as soon as you noticed him.
What's up?
Hey Faye, hi Cove. When did you get here? My dad dropped me off just a little bit ago. Thought I could visit one more time before school started.
Sorry.
You picked a busy time. Sorry. Derek couldn't even look at Cove. He nervously kept rolling a pebble with the bottom of his shoes.
Sorry.
I wasn't even thinking that your mom would be leaving today. I'm sorry, dude. What? You're not interrupting anything. You're always welcome here. It would have been sad if I didn't get to say goodbye before leaving. Derek came to hang out often, so it was inevitable that the two had met at some point this season. I think so too. It was apparent Derek would have preferred to have gotten there at a more opportune moment. He never liked seeming impolite, but their reassuring words soothed his worries. The tension he was holding in his body lessened, and he looked like he was feeling much more like himself. Bye, Derek. It was fun getting to know you. Bye, ma'am. Is there anything I can do to help? Nah, don't worry yourself over that. We're just about set. In that short amount of time, Cliff had gathered and packed the bags into the trunk. Kira took one last look at everyone and sighed. Alright, I don't want to keep the driver waiting. It's time to head out. The little crowd that had formed around started their chorus of farewells and well wishes traveling, but Kira still made no move to get into the taxi. She placed her attention on Cove. I'll call when I get to the airport and when I make it to Nevada. Also, you better call the moment you walk in the door at home. Otherwise, we'll be wondering all night if you got into trouble on the way there.
Can do.
I can do that. And could you call tomorrow too, so I can tell you how school went? Of course, I want to hear all about it. Kira put a hand on Cove's head and affectionately ruffled his hair one last time. She then let go, only to move on to squeezing his cheeks in her hands instead. Mom,
Cove.
I love you so much, baby. She was chuckling by the time she freed him and rounded things off with a small tap to the tip of his nose. Cove rubbed at his face and with a grin. Finally, she walked to the car while waving and took her seat in the taxi. Cliff hooked an arm around Cove's shoulder and kept him close as it began to pull away. For a moment, Cove looked up at his dad and then wrapped an arm across his back.
Bye.
Bye, Mom. Bye, travel safe. Kira rolled down the window and stuck her head out of it. She waved again while blowing kisses at Cove and Cliff. See you again. Before she was out of sight, he decided to wave goodbye. As the taxi headed down the road, you stuck your hand in the air to send her off. The cab turned down another road and completely disappeared from view. Cove let go of his dad and took a step back out into the empty street while looking in the direction his mom went. He smiled quietly, deep in thought. You got the impression Cove was feeling better than he was earlier. He was finally content with the way things were. You jumped a bit when your mom put a hand on your shoulder, pulling you away from your thoughts. She smiled when you looked at her. This was a great vacation, huh? You nodded in agreement. Yeah, it was a good one. Cove walked back over to the group, still genuinely happy. Derek grinned at him welcomingly, and everyone else there smiled at him, even Elizabeth. Well, Ma clapped her hands together, bringing everyone's attention back to the present. It's almost lunchtime. I think I'll put something special together. Her eyes sparkled with a plan, and Mom smiled. I bet you could use some help with that. That'd be absolutely wonderful. Derek glanced between the two, his eyebrows furrowed. Is there something I could do? Your moms exchanged the fond expression. Ma shook her head.
How sweet.
That's very sweet, Derek, but it's alright. It's not your job. Technically, your dad left you under Cliff's watch. You're meant to be taken care of by him, not doing chores for the neighbors. Mom laughed a little over her own joke. You watched Derek look away, discouraged.
It's okay.
It's okay, I don't mind. He was a little bashful about it. You wondered if Mom's jokes had just reminded him that he wasn't initially meant to be invited to lunch. It was getting a little awkward. Mom grinned sympathetically. Her comment was meant to lighten the mood, not bring it back down. Ma tried again to get things moving forward. Why don't you kids go have fun? You all can come back in about an hour. We'll make enough for everyone. Mom nodded in agreement.
Sounds good.
Another stunning idea, Lanny. Thanks.
Thank
Yeah,
Ew.
thank you. That sounds like a plan then. I don't want to cramp your style. I've got some stuff to work on, so I can be out of your hair in this afternoon. You should come by later too. No reason you should be the odd man out. Mom seemed amused as Cliff rubbed his back nervously. He grinned a wavering but pleased smile.
Thanks very much.
I appreciate the invite. He looked over the assembled crowd with knowing glances. I can help too, with as many people as you're feeding. That's going to be a lot of food. Didn't you hear what we told Derek? It wouldn't be fair to make you cook when we're the ones who are inviting you in. Ma raised an eyebrow when Cliff waved it off.
Come on.
I insist. Derek would be missing time with his pals. This would be a break for me. I'm quite a chef. Ma and Mom exchanged further glances before Mom shrugged.
True.
An airtight agreement. An airtight argument. If you're sure, we'll be happy to have you, Chef Cliff. Cliff's grin widened and seemed more hyped than you'd expect him to be about helping with lunch. Cove shook his head, a fond smile on his face. Then all us grown-up people will be heading inside. I assume the rest of you kiddos are staying out? Maybe not all of them. Ma tilted her head, a silent question for Elizabeth. Your sister thought for a moment.
Alright.
I'll stay with the kids.
That's fantastic.
That's great. Both your moms smiled at her, while Derek and Cove didn't seem to appreciate her phrasing. But with the plan decided, all three parents waved and headed for your house. It was just you teenagers now. Elizabeth looked at you and the others, a curious expression on her face. So, what now? You silently wondered if Elizabeth only stayed out with you to avoid getting roped into work. Then again, she could just genuinely wanted to hang out. You couldn't tell with your sister. Cove spoke up after no one else did to answer Elizabeth's question. Wanna go down the shopping street? It's been a while, and I don't think there's a lot of other things we could agree on. Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Sounds awesome to me. Unlike you guys, I haven't been there 1,001 times. It's new to me. Let's do it. You strolled across the road as a group, down to the beach and then to the left. It took less than 15 minutes to arrive, one of the conveniences of Sunsetburg. The four of you looked around at the familiar shops, trying to see if anything caught your attention this time. Derek was the most enthusiastic. He checked out every stall with his eyes wide with wonder. Elizabeth and Cove were in good spirits as well. That's so cool. He ran over to a street magician who was currently doing a card trick for a group of enchanted tourists. Derek clapped when the magician showed a middle-aged man his card. Derek turned back to the group with a curious gleam on his face. What does it take to perform here anyway? Do you have to ask somebody, or do you just show up and start doing stuff? Who would you even ask? It's a public street. Hey, Miss Mayor, can I pull a rabbit out of my hat, please? Flopsy is well behaved, I promise. Derek chuckled, his eyes searching up and down the scene. Maybe there's a boss of the shopping street. No one does any of this around my neighborhood. It's just regular stores behind walls. It's different if someone wants a real store, but here, I'm pretty sure people are just putting on their little shows whenever they want and do whatever. That's so neat. Would we be allowed to do something here? Cole laughed, and Derek began almost vibrating with excitement. Elizabeth rolled her eyes. What would we do? Well, I don't know what. Not yet. I mean, I just found out it's a possibility, you know? But there's gotta be something. We knew cool stuff. I'm sure if we think about it, we could plan a show that really get a crowd pumped. You thought it was a great idea and wanted to be part of it. Do you think I could help out too? Of course.
Nice.
I knew I could count on you. Now we just need an act. It'll come to us. Right. With some amusement, the gang continued to pursue the stalls. Elizabeth found some earrings with a dangling, badly misprinted globe that everyone laughed at. Cove picked out a blob as Iceland, but Derek thought that it had to be Greenland. You knew this is a world with what looks like 9 continents. I think you're both wrong. You backed up Derek. I think Derek's right. Oh, thanks, Faye. Suddenly, Cole froze. You stared at him, and then tried to see what caught his attention. When you saw a familiar face down the way, it all made sense. Between the crowds, his bright hair stood out like a neon green bowl in a kitchen sink. It was Jeremy. Jeremy slowly drifted his eyes down the street, and his eyes widened in mutual recognition. He definitely noticed you. Derek frowned, and Cove sighed. Neither of them were happy to see him again. You glared at Jeremy. You narrowed your eyes and projected your dislike. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. Her gaze swept over Jeremy without a hint of a clue. Jeremy simply scoffed to himself and waded deeper into the crowd of people. Derek relaxed and exhaled loudly. I'm glad he's not gonna start anything. He peeked over at Elizabeth with a tiny smirk. See, that was the mean kid.
What?
Huh? She still didn't get it. The first summer day hadn't made nearly as much of an impression on her as it did for Derek, but he smiled and waved it out. Just forget about him. I already have. He laughed, and Cole smiled lightly. He seemed in a much better mood now that Jeremy was gone. Eyes wandered over to where Jeremy disappeared. You hadn't forgotten the day you met him, either. He was only going to be in town for a vacation with his parents he hated. That glimpse was probably the last time you would ever see him. You kept the thought to yourself. Elizabeth snapped her fingers in front of you. Apparently, you had spaced out. Cove and Derek were already at the next stall. Come on, unless you want to get left there. You nodded and caught up with others. Cove raised an eyebrow. What were you thinking about? Nothing? He gave you a searching look, but let it drop when Derek yelled at you to go check something out. You couldn't help but wonder though, what would have happened if you would have interacted with Jeremy more. You were glad that you wouldn't find out. Jeremy was unlike anyone you had ever met before. You thought he was kind of pitiful. You and the group moved on from the stall and from Jeremy. It didn't take long for everyone to return to the joking. You all enjoyed what little time you had left. As Elizabeth mentioned, the hour was almost up. The little trip had flown by, and lunch must have been waiting for you now. Derek bounced on the balls of his feet.
Okay.
Come on, guys. Let's get going so we can eat. I'm starving. I can't wait. Cove stretched one of his arms lazily. Let's go then. You nodded at him. Then you followed Elizabeth as she took it upon herself to lead the way home. You walked fast, much faster than Derek preferred. She kept gaining a lead, and then Derek would jog back up to the group. With Cove's long legs, he had no trouble keeping up. You stayed with Derek. You gave Derek some company, which made him brighten up considerably. He brought up his idea of trying to make up a performance again, and you listened to his plans. For the most part, you could tell he was being silly on purpose, but there was a shine in his eyes. You both got so engrossed in the conversation that you didn't notice how far you'd fallen behind your sister until Cove looked over his shoulder and shouted something. Derek grinned at you and then tried to make it a race to catch up with Elizabeth. It was a pleasant walk home, and in no time you had made it back. Derek got the front door and held it open for everyone as you each moseyed inside. The three parents were still in the kitchen. They looked up and waved. Welcome back, everyone. You made it just in time. I hope you're hungry. So, did everyone have a nice time out? She gestured for people to take a seat at the table. Plates and silverware have already been placed out. You took your normal seat. Elizabeth sat across from you, and Derek took the seat to your left.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we had a great time. It was fine. I had fun. I really liked it. That's good in my book. Casually, Mr. Holden sat in the empty seat across from Cove. He smiled at you and all the other kids. Mom set down a platter full of water glasses on the table. She looked down at the gathering. It's a good thing we have 8 chairs. I can't remember the last time we've held a group this big over a meal. Can you pass the drinks down to the other side? Make sure you all get one. Sure. Those close to the cups obliged and started offering waters around. As everything got set up, Ma chided Elizabeth to take her elbows off the table.
Now.
And you shouldn't slouch. She pointed to Mr. Holden, who was leaning forward with both arms on the table. Oops. Mr. Holden seemed unsure about all the sudden attention and carefully rearranged his posture to something suitable for a fancy dinner. He smiled sheepishly at Mom. Elizabeth rolled her eyes and Ma gave a level look at her. You shouldn't be impolite to a guest in the house either. Elizabeth groaned, long and long-suffering. Ma giggled and Mr. Holden chuckled.
Not bad.
The lot of you could learn a thing or two from Derek. He has the best manners here. Derek blushed, but it was true. His posture was upright and formal. He even held his fork gracefully. His table manners, on top of all his attempts to aid your parents, made him the model of meal attendee behavior.
Aw.
It's nothing. It's true, though. You have been a lovely guest. I've noticed that too. It's always nice when you stayed over, Derek. Derek smiled and sat a little taller in his chair. And do you have anything good to say about our other guests? She looked deliberately at Cove with a teasing smirk. Or is there nothing to say? Well, Cove is my number one, but he does still clean his hands by wiping them on his pants. Cove frowned at that and absent-mindedly brushed his hands on his pant legs. Your mom's laughed lightly.
There.
Elizabeth, you should know, after all these years, Cove is hardly a guest anymore. Cove smiled awkwardly. Thanks. You complimented Derek on his politeness. It's cool how you know all those manner things. Oh, thank you. He seemed more embarrassed by getting a compliment from a kid his age. Everyone ate their meals together and continued to hang out for the afternoon. After the food, you and the others played a couple games and talked about plans for the upcoming year. The time passed by quickly, and soon it was time to part ways. Mr. Holden talked to your moms, and Cove drifted over to you, knowing that as soon as his dad finished up, he would be leaving. I guess we're going.
Okay.
Yeah, bye. Could you move? I need the phone. Cove raised an eyebrow and Elizabeth impatiently gestured behind him. Cove realized he was standing right in front of where the receiver was placed. He sidestepped out of the way and shook his head, clearly thinking Elizabeth was rushing too much. Your sister made a beeline for the phone and started dialing the number of what you figured was one of her friends. Knowing Elizabeth, she was going to be on there for a while. You, Cove, and Derek shuffled closer to the door. It seemed like Mr. Holden was wrapping up his conversation, so everyone started saying their various farewells. See you later, Cove. We gotta do this again sometime. Yeah, see you. Cove turned to you and smiled slightly. Bye, Faye. You waved goodbye to him. He waved back with a curt gesture.
Dude.
Seriously, dude. We'll have to hang out later. I'm gonna miss you during school. He offered Cove a high five and the two boys clapped their hands together. Cove and his dad had left. After that, your parents started cleaning up the house, and Elizabeth was still chatting to her friends on the phone. It was just you and Derek left. He elected to stay outside in front of the house to wait for his dad to pick him up. You decided to keep your guest company, although he was originally Cove's visitor. A light summer breeze blew through your hair, and Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot. Thanks for waiting with me. He kicked at the ground distractedly. That's
No.
still gonna be a while, so do you wanna go for a walk? Okay. The two of you walked down the street again, just wandering without a destination planned. It was a quiet stroll, too quiet for Derek being the company. You turned to him when you had noticed that he wasn't saying a word. That was unusual. Derek always had something he could chat about. You weren't sure if you should ask about it. Somehow you ended up at the old park near the beach. You glanced over to Derek once more, still expecting him to say something any second now. However, nothing came from him. In fact, now you noticed a frown creeping on his face. Derek smiled when he realized that you were watching. At least his mouth was turned up. There wasn't anything that really felt happy in the expression. He turned away and the smile fell off his face. His eyes stared intently at the ground, and you raised an eyebrow. If you want to talk about something, I'm here. I'm a little sad. It's just with school starting back again, it's gonna be harder to visit. I'm gonna have homework and clubs and practices and everything else. It really sucks. We go to different schools. His face screwed up and his fists were closed tightly together. This was really concerning him. What if we don't have time? You channeled some optimism into the conversation. We'll make time. We can talk over the phone and have plans for the weekends. It'll be okay. Derek looked up at the sky. It was orange and purple with little wisps of clouds scattered around. A plane flew high with a jet stream trailing behind it. Then he turned to the ground again. Derek's face was tilted far enough down that it was harder to read his expression. Hey Faye, I actually wanted to talk to you about something, if you don't mind. There was a pause and you waited for him to finish his thought.
Sorry.
I was just kinda wondering, do you like guys at all? Like, would you ever want to be with someone who was a boy? Sorry, if that's weird to ask. Maybe? Okay, then he hesitated before finishing his question. So, what I mean is, just, is there any guy you think is kind of cool that you like around here? Not at school or anything like that. He ducked his head further. You thought about it. I like you. Derek's eyes widened. For a moment, you wondered if his heart had stopped because he stood there, completely frozen. Then quietly, almost breathlessly, he asked the question. Really?
Really?
Maybe you don't really get what I'm asking about. He mumbled to himself for a while. So? Derek pulled himself together. Somewhat meekly, he looked at you while he tried to project confidence. His posture was too tight for you to believe it. He was nervous. You know,
Right.
thinking ahead and everything is important. You've gotta get yourself a game plan and that all that. It's good to make plans, especially backup plans, he babbled, all full of energy and forced gusto. Well, anyways, I heard about this thing where people make pacts with their good friends that if they don't find anyone else, then they get together. Together, like they get married and stuff. So I was one thinking, since it's good to have plans, it might be cool if we did something like that. His eyes widened and he started to make frantic hand gestures. Just, then we'd never have to worry about the future or finding someone. We can set it like a whole decade in the future, forever from now. We'd have graduated high school and probably college too. We'd have jobs and be really grown up. I mean, we'd probably have our own places and maybe our own pets and student loans and cars. Derek babbled on for a while more. It was as if all the words he held in silence during your walk had burst out now, all at once. So, yeah, what do you think? Derek, I do know what you're talking about. I like you. Why won't you listen to me? He had to pause, desperate to find a way to explain himself. Well, that's a big decision. You don't have to think about that kind of thing right now. It's better to worry about all that later, when we're grown up. That's why it's a good idea to have a plan, I like you a lot too, and honestly, we'd work out the best for that. So, it's a deal. Really? Awesome. Derek brightened significantly and started to bounce excitedly on the balls of his feet. Okay, then let's do it. He held out his hand, offering a shake. Officially, he repeated the terms of the deal. If in 10 years I, Derek Suarez, am still single, and if in 10 years you, Faye Madison, are still single, we both agree that the two of us will get together. You passed right by his outstretched arms and placed a slight kiss against the side of his face. He gasped and slapped the hand against his other cheek. Oh, that works too.
It's a deal.
Alright, thanks. I feel better about the future already. He laughed and scratched the back of his head. You could tell he was giddy about it, and you felt happy too. Glad to hear it, fiancé, sort of. Glad to see it. You didn't spend much longer at the park after that. Derek didn't want to miss his dad, so you both made your way back to the street. Derek's steps forward seemed lighter than before. Derek found all kinds of fun things to talk about as you walked side by side back to your street. Then you plopped down on the curb outside your house, hugging your arms around your legs. His voice was comforting, and you were grateful that Derek was keeping you both distracted from the inevitable for a little while longer. It was still summer vacation.